A fair number have all asked me the same thing. Why? And it's a fair question because I'm already fortunate enough to have a successful career, to have a wife that I love to pieces, and 3 children that I thank God for. But I am not just an actor or a mother or a wife. I'm also a New Yorker, and I'm running for governor because I love this state. I was born here in New York City in a 1-bedroom, 5th-floor walk-up, just me and my mom. I am a proud public school graduate, and I am an even prouder public school parent. This is the state where I started acting at age 12 to put myself through college when my mom told me she wasn't going to be able to afford to. This is the state where I've had my career, where I've raised my kids. New York is the only place I've ever lived, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This is the state where I have been a vocal advocate for LGBTQ equality and for women's health and women's rights, including a woman's right to choose. And in the last 17 years, I have been traveling across this state, fighting for better public schools for my kids, but also for all of New York's kids. When I was growing up here, my mom and I didn't have much money, but I felt like anything was possible. And I had opportunities that I don't see for the vast majority of New York's kids today. Today, New York's schools are the 2nd most unequal in the entire country. And the gap between the richest and the poorest schools has grown wider today under Andrew Cuomo than it's ever been. New York State itself is the single most unequal state in the country. The top 1% of New Yorkers earn 45 times what the other 99% earn combined. And let me tell you about this kind of crushing inequality. This is not something that just happens by mistake. It comes from a choice. It comes from a choice to slash taxes for corporations and the super rich and slash services on everybody else. And it's a choice we're used to being made by Republicans like Donald Trump, but for the past 8 years, it's a choice that has been made by our governor, Andrew Cuomo. 8 years ago, I voted for Andrew Cuomo because I believed that he was a real Democrat. But since taking office, he has shown us his true colors. First, he encouraged a backroom deal to get a group of Democratic senators to vote with the Republicans so the Republicans could keep control of our state Senate. Second, he allowed the Republicans to draw their own gerrymandered district maps, suppressing Democratic voters, most especially Democratic voters of color. And with these 2 moves, Andrew Cuomo gave the Republican Party in New York State the power to block almost all of our big Democratic legislative priorities. It's surprising, right? But you know who wasn't surprised? The Koch brothers. All right. The Koch brothers donated $87,000 to Andrew Cuomo when he first ran in 2010 because they knew a good investment when they saw one. They knew that whether or not he called himself a Democrat, his policies were going to benefit corporations like theirs and billionaires like them. And they were dead right. Since taking office, Andrew Cuomo has given massive tax breaks to corporations and the super rich, while he has decimated our infrastructure and starved our state, its cities, and its rural areas of their most basic services. His inhumane budgets have been passed on the backs of our children, our elderly, our working class, and people of color. And we hear all the time about how the big money interests control D.C., but if Washington is a swamp, Albany is a cesspool. Andrew Cuomo promised to clean up Albany, but instead he and his cronies have cleaned up for themselves. There is a reason that people close to Andrew Cuomo keep winding up under indictment for corruption. His right-hand man, Joe Prococo, was just convicted of selling his office to the highest bidder. Cuomo has built a $31 million war chest with the donations of millionaires, billionaires, and corporations. But do you know how much of that came from small donors? 0.1%. So if you're a regular person in New York, the chance that Andrew Cuomo is going to care about your concerns is exactly that. 0.1%. New York's 8 years under the Cuomo administration have been an exercise in living with disappointment, dysfunction, and dishonesty. If we had a real Democrat as a governor, it's not just that we would have a Democratic Senate. We could have fully funded our public schools. Yes. We could have enacted campaign finance reform. Yes. We could have enacted the Women's Equality Agenda and the New York Dream Act. We could have fixed our subways, strengthened rent control, and become a leader in renewable energy. I am running for governor because I want these things for New York and for New Yorkers. We want our state back. We want our government to work again. We are tired of corruption and dysfunction in Albany, and we are tired of fake corporate Democrats who won't lift a finger unless their donors say it's okay. We are going to do things differently. I am not accepting a single dime of corporate money. This campaign belongs to the people who are part of it. And that's why I'm asking you to get involved. We don't have to settle for things the way they are. We all know New York could be better, but to make it better, we have to do it together. Here is what we could do if we work together. We could commit to ending racial and economic inequality in this state. For starters, we could fully fund our schools, all of our schools. We need to adequately educate all of our young people without regard to their zip code or their skin color. Too many of the majority black and brown schools in our very segregated system are underfunded and over-policed. Our schools are pushing white children toward college and black children into the criminal justice system. And that has to change. We need to fix our broken subway. It gets worse every day. You know that, and I know that, because we are on it every day, unlike Governor Cuomo. The subway is the lifeblood of our city. If the subway dies, so does New York, and right now our subways are on life support. We need to strengthen and renew our expiring rent laws. We need to invest in NYCHA. We need to take aggressive measures to protect affordable housing for millions of New Yorkers so families are not pushed out of their homes and their communities. We need to end mass incarceration and the over-policing of communities of color that is costing people access to housing and job opportunities and exposing many to deportation. We need to make sure that the $15 minimum wage is real for all New Yorkers across the state, regardless of whether they're a restaurant worker in Bed-Stuy or a factory worker in Rochester. We need to show the entire country and the world that in the era of Donald Trump's divide and conquer agenda, New Yorkers will come together and we will lead our nation forward. Governor Cuomo knows that the more he can distract and divide us, the more he can tie our government into knots, and the more corporate interests can run New York for themselves. But we don't have to accept that. It doesn't have to be that way. Our state could be a place where every single New Yorker could have what we need to thrive if we didn't have a governor determined to sell New York off to the highest bidder. Now is the time to keep marching forward. From Stonewall to the Supreme Court, from Seneca Falls to the Women's March, and from Zuccotti Park and the Staten Island corner where Eric Garner stood, all the way to Albany. This year, thousands of women all over America are running for office for the first time. And we're realizing that if we want things to change, we have to do it for ourselves. I am humbled and inspired by these women, and I am honored.